Good morning. My name is Eric. I'm the pastor here at Shoreline. Just want to welcome you, especially those watching online. Great day at Crab Island. Finally have a nice day this week. So it's a beautiful day for our second to the last service out there. Next week will be our last service out there. So just want to welcome all those watching in online. And last week, if you weren't here, I talked about how I feel like I'm rounding the bend on a track relay event. And I'm approaching that final handoff. And I'm carrying the baton, and as I'm approaching the handoff, I'm aiming at the next runner. They've got their left hand out. I've got this in my right hand, and they're already sprinting. And we're in what we call, I talked about last week, as the fly zone. That's where both of them can run. But then you have the handoff zone, and that's where you hand off the baton. And it's nearly the end of my race, but they're just starting. And we're about to get into the passing zone. And one day, I'm going to hand off the baton of this leadership of this church to the next generation. Now, let me just say up front, I'm not resigning. I'm not retiring. I'm not going anywhere. But I'll tell you what's happened to me. Because of talking about this in this season that we're in, you know, we've been a church for 17 years, going on 18 years. We moved here 18 years ago to start this church. And you can't help but look back and look at where we came from. You know, it was 18 years ago that Darlene and I moved back here to start Shoreline, and that's what we looked like. That was actually on our website, out on Noriega Point. And we moved back here just in time for Hurricane Ivan. Remember Hurricane Ivan? You move here, and a month later, everything's shut down. You have no electricity for a week and all that stuff. And that was 2 years of hurricanes, 2004, 2005. And it was such an adventure. It was such a great adventure. And I'm not saying it was just an adventure because it is an adventure. You move back, you buy a new house, and then you have a hurricane, and again, we didn't have power for a week, and you're running a generator. That's adventurous. But the reason why it was such an adventure is because it was a faith adventure. See, vision is an adventure of faith. Because this is how vision works. This is my picture of it. I didn't get this out of a book. This is my picture. Vision is like you're on a mountaintop, and you're looking across a valley to the next mountain to where you want to go. And you're like, that's where we're going next, right? But in between is a valley. And so what you see is the peak. You're like, this is where we're going. This is where we are. But in between is a valley, and it's full of clouds and fog, and you can't see what's down there. So you really don't have any idea of what you need to go through to get to this vision that God's called you, or whatever it is, a dream, whatever it is. You can't see what it is you have to go through. So there's questions like, where are we going to live? You know, how are we going to make money until the church launches? And so there's all these questions. And then if you're a visionary, it's really frustrating because people go, well, how are you going to do this? How are you going to do that? I don't know. You know, there's two things that scare me in life. Details and carnies. Both of them super scary to me, okay? Because you start talking about details, want details from me, and I get all notched up, you know, I get in a knot because I'm not a detail person. I'm like, this is where we're going. But the detail people are like, but where are we going to live? How are we going to make money? And then not only is the questions in those valleys, it's fears. What if nobody comes to church? What if I'm not really qualified and I think of myself more highly than I ought to? But what happens with a vision, after a while, the excitement of the adventure, the possibilities of what could be, the possibilities of what should be begin to outweigh the fear and the insecurities and the unknown to a point that you can't live with yourself if you just don't do it. And so you do it, even though none of those questions are answered and none of those fears are relieved, you end up on this faith adventure. You're like, God, I don't know how you're gonna do this, but I'm excited. I'm scared, but I'm excited. Now, it was easy for me, I'd say it's easy because adventure has always been a family value of ours. I mean, you see in my life, I still love going on adventures. When we were younger, our family was younger, we had no money, our vacations were all adventure vacations. We went hiking, we went camping, we went sailing, surfing adventures. We did all adventures like that. Now, the thing about adventures is they aren't without their challenges. You can ask my kids or student leaders because we actually used adventures, hiking, sailing, all kinds of adventures to train up leaders. And I still do that today. But you can ask my own children stories. They could tell you stories of being out in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico in a huge storm, losing people. I lost people in the mountains. We found them later, but that's not a good thing when you lose leaders in the mountains because there's a lot of pressure in youth ministry because maybe in your job, if you have a 98% return, you're gonna get a promotion. But if you don't come back with every student from a student trip, you get fired. They want 100% return, okay? So we demasted, almost sank. Now we love challenges, but we love adventures, my family does, but we also kind of love the challenges they come with. That's why coming back here to Destin, to our roots, to start a church 18 years ago, it was a faith adventure. It was an adventure that got us excited. It wasn't just about the risk of, sinking your boat, things that could cost your life, but it was a risk like, how are we gonna do this? Where are we gonna live? And this is our roots, by the way. My father was born here. I was the second generation to be born here. Now I've had two more generations. My son was born here. My grandkids have been born here. So we felt like when we were coming back to this area to start a church, we weren't just coming back to start a church. We felt like this was our legacy. This was our heritage. My father was born here. We have streets in the area that have named after my family. And then all of my two sisters, we all left. So after being gone for about 15 years, the Lord began to kind of nudge us that it's time to go back and not just start a church, but we're coming back to reclaim our legacy. Right now, the house we live in is only 3 blocks from where my mom and dad grew up. And they met each other. They went to the same high school and they lived in the same neighborhood. So coming back here was awesome to come back and start a church for people who don't like church, but it was also a part of coming back to our roots. So, as Whitney said, that's what I like to say her name, Whitney said, this is the last we've been doing this series all year long. We'll probably hit it one more time in the fall, but this is the last one of this particular section that I can see clearly. And just to give you a little recap, in case you haven't been here, we've been looking at a story from the Old Testament. Specifically, we've been looking at a fellow named Nehemiah. Now, Nehemiah lived around 444 BC in the time of King Artaxerxes, who was the king of Persia. Now, Susa is the capital of Persia. And Nehemiah was a cupbearer to the king, but even more than that, they'd become friends. And now Nehemiah was a Jewish man, but as far as we can tell, he'd never been to Jerusalem. He'd never been to Israel. He'd never been back to his roots, really, where his family comes from, okay? Because Jerusalem had been destroyed by a previous kingdom, Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon. Babylon went into Jerusalem, they flattened the city, destroyed it, and took some of the people back to Babylon. And then consequently, a few years go by, maybe decades, and Babylon is conquered by Persia. So now you have a lot of Jews residing in Persia, residing in Susa, and the king of Persia is like, I don't even know how they got here. So he gives them permission to go back home and rebuild this, or to go back. He didn't give them permission to rebuild, but go back. Now Nehemiah is serving the king, but he's depressed because he'd heard stories about how this once great city, Jerusalem, it was the greatest kingdom at the time of King David and the time of Solomon, now lies in rubbles. So one day as he's serving the king wine or serving the king, he had prayed, by the way, and we looked at this prayer, that God would give him favor. So one day he's in there serving the king, and the king says to him, what's the matter, Panda Bear? Why are you so blue? That's how close they'd become. His nickname was Panda Bear. It's from some ancient translations, I figured that. You won't find that in the Bible, that's mine, okay? But Nehemiah says, it's hard for me to be happy when the city of my ancestors lies in ruins. So then he takes a chance and says, can I take some time off to go back and rebuild the city? The thing is, Nehemiah didn't work for the king. Nehemiah was a slave. Slaves don't get time off. But he had prayed for favor, and the king says, I'll tell you what, I'll do something even better. I'll make you the governor of Jerusalem. That way, I can send you back with all of the supplies and all the resources that you need to rebuild the city. So that's what he does. He amasses his crew, and he heads back to Jerusalem, his roots. And he goes back with all the supplies and some people and military, and the vision to restore this city to what it once was. The walls had been torn down for years. The surrounding region was ruled by powerful warlords who basically had their way with Jerusalem. Because there was no walls, they could show up whenever they wanted to show up. Essentially, Jerusalem became their booty call. Be like, hey, it's 2 a.m. Where were you last night? He came over again. Did you let him in? Well, there's no gates. There's no walls. Of course I had to let him in. Nothing? All right, Donnie, let's make sure we don't put that joke in the second service. All right, anyway, so they would just show up whenever they want. And they basically had their way with Jerusalem. So Nehemiah shows up and inspects the city. I mean, and it is in shambles on so many different levels. The economy is in shambles, the temple is torn down, the walls are torn down, and there's no gates. So Nehemiah decides that he's gonna focus on one thing. He says, if I only get one thing done while I'm here, I've gotta rebuild the walls of the city. So that's what he starts. He starts to rebuild the walls, and he makes progress very quickly. And the people, the governors, the warlords in the surrounding region start to get nervous because this is their meal ticket. If he builds walls and builds gates and people can't get in, they're gonna take a resource. So the leader of these warlords is a guy named Sanballat. And Sanballat, what he decides to do is send some spies into the city, kind of infiltrate Nehemiah's group, maybe bring some dissent. They're Jewish people, but he sends some spies in there, and that doesn't work. So he decides to resort to force, that we're gonna attack them. And so Nehemiah comes up with a new plan. He equips every worker with a sword, and for every one person that's working on the wall, there's a guard that's standing by. And because of that, they start to make progress rather quickly. And so now the walls are almost done. And Sanballat tries one more thing to try to get Nehemiah off this plan, and he tries to distract Nehemiah so he can kill him. And that's where we're gonna pick up our story. Nehemiah chapter 6, this is the last time that we're in here. Nehemiah chapter 6, we're gonna start in verse 1. If you got your phones, why don't you pull your phones out, because these are on our notes. There's some good questions here you're gonna wanna ask at the end of the service. And it's also a good reminder to turn your phone on silence. And if you do go to the app, you're gonna notice that they put a better picture of me on there. So you're definitely gonna wanna go there. Not that one. This is the one. Here, let me just show you. Can you zoom in on that? See, that's much better. So make sure you go to your app, refresh it, so you get the thinner me, not the fatter me. There she is. Michelle's like, when are they gonna change that fat picture? All right. There we go. Okay, Nehemiah says, when it was reported to Sanballat, Tobiah, to Gershom the Arab, these are those warlords, and to the rest of our enemies that I'd rebuilt the wall and that no breach remained in it, although at the time I'd not set up the doors and gates. So basically, it gets back to Sanballat and his cronies that they're almost done with the walls. I mean, they're almost complete. There's no breach left. They might not have reached the height they want yet, but there's no breach, and they haven't done the gates yet. So again, if they get those gates up, these guys lose their meal ticket. So they write a letter to Nehemiah and send it by messenger. Now remember, these are his enemies. Here's what they say. Then Sanballat and Geshem sent a message to me saying, come, let us meet together at Sheraphim in the plain of, oh no, but they were planning to harm me. So the letter is an invitation to meet for lunch. Come on, have your people call mine, let's get together. But what they planned to do was get him alone and then kill him. And then without a leader, the walls would stop and they would be able to do whatever they want. Well, Nehemiah answers them. Now let me just set you up here for a second. In this answer is everything that you need to transform your life in whatever area it is. In this answer contains the motivation that you need to make your dream happen. In this answer is everything, it's all the ingredients that you need to determine what is the most important thing for you to be doing in your life. I don't care what you are, whether you're a student, a parent, or a grandparent. But his answer is also the lens for us as a church that what we need to be doing, that what we need to be focusing on. Well, this will help us determine what we should be focusing on. Here's his answer. So I sent messengers back to them saying, I am doing a great work and I cannot come down. Why should the work stop while I leave it and come down to you? I love his reply. I'm doing a great work and I cannot come down. I'm telling you, that is the answer that we all need for whatever it is that we need to focus on, the most important thing in our life. In fact, I think we should say it together. Can we do it? Because you're gonna need to learn to say this. I am doing a great work. Emphasis on the great. Let's do it again. I am doing a great work and I cannot come down. Nehemiah knew that what he was doing was a God thing. He knew that it was an important thing and that it was the most important thing that he had to do, that he was doing a great work and he didn't have time for a meeting. He didn't have time. He would not be allow himself to be distracted, that he was going to stay focused on the task at hand. This is what God's called me to do. I'm going to wear blinders, if you would. I'm going to focus on this thing alone. Now, taking time to meet with Sanballat was not a bad thing. I mean, meeting with your enemies to avoid war can be a good thing, right? But God had called Nehemiah to build a wall, and he viewed this as an opportunity, or he viewed this opportunity as a distraction, which was a good thing he thought like this because Sanballat had no intention of making peace. His every intention was to get him off of his focus so he could distract him and eventually kill him, and the vision would die. Now, every day of your life and every day of my life, opportunities come along that have the potential to distract us from the main thing that God has called us to do. It can be entertainment activities, athletic, travel ball, financial opportunities, relational, religious, investment, career, whatever, business opportunity, vacations, going out to Crab Island. The list is endless. And if anyone, look, in my world, in my world, the opportunities for the greatest potential, opportunities are the greatest potential to distract me from what God has called me to do. And the thing is I can justify them. If I wanted to, I could spend every day of my ministry in meetings, speaking engagements, counseling. Do you know how many people want me to counsel them? Just because I'm up, I call it the Bon Jovi effect, because I'm up on stage, you think the only person, I don't say you, I'm talking about other people, they probably aren't here today, think the only person that they can talk to about their problems is me. And I could spend every day doing counseling, community functions, conferences, I mean, you name it, not to mention just regular distractions, because you know me, I love to have fun. But see, like you, I could be even busier than I am now, making less progress to accomplish what God's called me to focus on. In fact, if you weren't here the last 2 weeks, I shared with you that my plan was to coast the rest of my time leading this church. And why not? I led a successful building program that purchased us this building, and we were able to remodel it. I've worked hard. We were portable for 12 years. If anyone deserves to coast, I thought it would be me. But in this season, when I'm talking to you about this, what I realize is that is just a distraction from what God has called me to do. You know, when we were youth pastors, God called us to raise up teenagers and leaders from the teens that God gave us influence with. And we had a great youth ministry program for 17 years. Some of those youth that went through that are now full-time pastors, ministers, worship leaders, even doctors and successful business people. And then God called us back here to plant a church for people who don't like church. And even in that calling, God was still calling us to train and equip young leaders. And now, as this season of my life, my calling, to the best of my ability, is to hand this baton off. See, this is the great work we're doing. I can't come down. I've got to stay focused on the great work that God has called us to do. Now, to accomplish the important things, sometimes you have to say no to the good things, because most of the time, it's the good things that have the greatest potential to distract you from the best things. It's the good things that have the greatest potential to distract you from the vision things. See, if Nehemiah would have accepted Sanballat's invitation, his enemies would have killed him. And for you, it's the same thing. There are hobbies. Don't get, if you're here for church for the first time, you're like, what are you killing? I'm not saying that, okay? If anyone has a potential to be distracted, it's me. I love fun. I love activities. I love to fish. I have a boat, and I've never not had a boat. But I've seen a lot of people become distracted because of it, and they lose sight of their vision, hobbies, relationships, whatever it is. And like I said, and the thing about it is that when we allow them to distract us, we can find our vision dying. Whether it's a church vision or your vision for your family or your business. And then we don't accomplish our dreams. So here's what Nehemiah did. Verse 4, he says, or here's what happened. After he sent a message back that he can't come down because he's doing a great work, it says, they sent messages to me 4 times in this manner. And I answered them in the same way. So every time they invite him off the wall, he's basically saying, look, I can't come down. Nope, I can't come down. I'm doing a great work. I can't come down. Sorry, I can't. I'm doing a great work. I can't come down. Guys, you can't allow good opportunities to rob you of your family vision. I've been there where you're so focused on the vision that there's things that you can't do in life that you have to lay aside. But here's what you have to do, guys, is when you're tucking your kids down at night, you got to look at them and just whisper to yourself, I'm doing a great thing. I can't come down. And when you're tempted to get on the phone and tell your wife that you're going to be late from work again because you got some important details, you know what you need to do is you need to look at her picture on the desk and tell yourself, I'm doing a great work. I can't come down. And then you pick up your car keys and you go home. Ladies, when you struggle with adding one more good activity into a schedule that's already bursting at the seams, this season you may have to think about your family and say, I'm doing a good work and I can't come down. If you're single here, we got any singles? Don't raise your hand. Because here's what happens when you say have singles raise their hands, they quickly look around to see what that one looks like and see what that one looks like. I'm not gonna be a part of that. But maybe you have a vision for your life of what it could be, because remember that's what vision is, what it could be and what it should be. And instead you get distracted instead of allowing God to shape your character so that when the right person comes into your life, you are the person that the person you're looking for is looking for. And so you have to say, no, that's a distraction for what I want my future to be like, so I'm doing a great work and I can't come down. I know people who have a dream of being out of debt, but they're continually, especially when you live in this area, continually distracted by the allurement of more stuff. Again, I've seen something as a new boat distract men and women from what God's called them to do. I've seen Christians catch a vision, especially new Christians, they catch a vision for reaching their friends who are far from God, and then whatever distracts them, hobbyists, whatever distract them. You have to remember this, that for every dream, and listen, if you have a dream, there are dozens of distractions waiting out there to distract you. And for our dream as this church, there are dozens of distractions out there. So you have to be careful that you don't let good opportunities rob you from seeing your dream become a reality. You have to be able to distinguish between the good and the God, or the main thing, or the vision thing. Now, get back to the story. When the other things didn't work, Sanballat started a rumor. And the rumor was that Nehemiah was establishing a kingdom, that once he was finished with the walls, he was going to have some prophets stand up and go, hey, this is the new king. And with that rumor, they're thinking that Nehemiah, it's going to get back to the king of Persia. Nehemiah is going to have to run back to Persia and argue his case, and then they could tear down distract the building keep it from happening. And here's what they said. It says, then the fifth time, Sanballat sent his aide to me with the same message, and in his hand was an unsealed letter in which was written, it is reported among the nations, and, everyone's saying, really? Who's everyone? Everyone's saying that you and the Jews are plotting to revolt, and therefore you're building the wall. That's why you're building the wall. Moreover, according to these reports, you are about to become their king, and you have even appointed a prophet to make this proclamation about you in Jerusalem, because that's what they used to do. The new king of Israel, God says so, right? There is a king in Judah. Now this report will get back to the king. So come, let us meet together. Now in those days, a letter was written on papyrus or leather or something like that. And then it was rolled up, and then it was tied with a string, and then it was sealed with wax. And usually they put their signet on it. So it was unopened. Sanballat left this letter open because he wanted to make it known to everyone who handled it. Hey, I've got top secret letter. You need to deliver this. Okay, I will. Ooh, let's see what it says. He's just trying to spread the rumor and that Nehemiah is trying to establish himself as the king of Judah, but nothing could have been further from the truth, which, nobody cares about the truth, right? Nobody cares about that. If word got out that Nehemiah was laying down the groundwork to create a kingdom, to establish himself as king, he would find himself back at the guillotine or with a noose around his head. But once again, it doesn't faze Nehemiah. Look at his response. Here's what he says. He says, I don't have his response. Here's once again, because I had to cut it out, I had to edit it. So Here's what he says. He says, this isn't true. And they basically focus on rebuilding the wall, and that's it, okay? Here's what I wanted to focus on, verse 15. So the wall was completed on the 25th month of Elul in 52 days. When all of our enemies heard of it and all the nations surrounding us saw it, look at this, they lost their confidence. See, everything was built, all those rumors, all of those threats, all of those distractions are to get you off your vision, because once your vision begins to happen, you now have confidence that God has called you and you're going to be successful. He says, for they recognized that this work had been accomplished with the help of our God. What's really cool, he says it was accomplished with the help of our God, but there was no miracles. There was no supernatural. There was no extreme makeover. Move that camel, and they're looking at Jerusalem. They didn't wake up one night and elves had finished it. Oh my gosh, right? Besides, everyone knows elves have been prone to attack their masters, so don't even do that, right? God honored their hard work and their commitment to complete this great work and not let the distractions pull them off what God said was important. And everyone looked at this later and went, this had to be God. 52 days. Now here's the point, and this is what I want to make. This is the point I want to make as we approach this last week of this series. And that is, as a church, we cannot allow ourselves to be distracted in this season. We can't allow good opportunities. We can't allow criticism or fear or questions derail us from our vision. We have to keep our eyes on the finish line. Remember the first scripture we talked about last week in Hebrews, running the race that is before us, setting aside every distraction that would entangle us. We have a great work that God has called us to do, so we cannot come down. Now, everybody ends up somewhere in life, and Nehemiah ended up somewhere on purpose, because what he believed could be and what he believed should be about the city of Jerusalem, that's what motivated him. That's what he kept his eyes on. And the people responded to this call for spiritual reform and social reform. So the temple was rebuilt, the scripture was brought back, Ezra brought back the scriptures and began to read the scriptures. And Nehemiah never lost sight of his destiny through this whole time. Like Nehemiah, we have a destiny to fulfill. God has placed before our church opportunities and responsibilities that are brimming with significance. And he's given you gifts and he's given you talents that he's waiting for you to use. But as Nehemiah's story illustrates, it takes more than imagination. It takes more than just a dream. It takes more than just a vision. A vision requires more than just a one-time encounter with God. It requires prayer, requires patience, requires discipline. And it's a faith adventure. It's one of those adventures where you go, God, I don't know how you're gonna do this, but I'm just gonna do it. See, what does this mean for us as a church? We have a race to run before us. And if we wanna look at it like a relay, I'd say that this leg we're on is not just coming tonight and making our commitments and our offerings towards paying off this building, but it's really a leg that spans through the rest of this year. It's not just trying to pay off this building so we can pass the baton off to this next generation, so this next generation has the margin and everything that they need, that they can run the race. That's part of it. That's what we're doing tonight, is we're gonna come and we're gonna celebrate. It's gonna be a time of party and celebration. We're gonna worship God. We're gonna be loud, and we're gonna thank God for the season that we're in church. And some of us are gonna bring our offerings, and if you don't have, some of us are making commitments. We're gonna write it on an envelope and say, this is what I'm committing to. And the reason why we do that is because we wanna know if we're gonna make the goal. And if you don't know how much, you need to go back and listen to part 2 last week. But a lot of us have prayed. Some of us have gone dark and listened to the Lord, and tonight is the night we say, yes, God, I am all in. I'm ready for a faith adventure. Now, it's not just paying off the building, though, that's part of this leg. There's other things. Last week, or Whitney said that next week we start a new series called Botched, and she called it a hook series. See, what a hook series is, a hook series is where you can strategically partner with your church to invite your friends, the people that you've invested in, the people you have relationship with, and you invite them into the church, and what we'll do is we'll take the responsibility of initiating the conversation about what their future looks like, the whole idea about God, all those things, the things that you want to bring up but you're nervous to, we will bring it up for you so that at lunch you can talk to them about it. Now I want to give you a quick tip on how you recognize, well, who should I invite? You need to be looking for the 3 nots, okay? The 3 nots are not in church, not doing well, not prepared for. What does that mean? That means in the next week, you're in conversation and someone goes, yeah, we just moved here. We're not in church right now. I just lost my father, so we're not doing well. We just had our first baby and we definitely were not prepared for that. See the 3 nots? And then all you do is go, oh my God, you should come to my church because that's exactly what we're talking about this week. So that's part of the race. Another part of the race is this leg continues with this fall with Rooted. Rooted, you saw the video of Turk. You want to be bad like Turk? Then you come to Rooted. Rooted is a multi-week journey that deepens your connection with God and with his church and with your purpose. So you can step out and discover your place in this epic story that God is writing here at Shoreline. Now, one of the questions that we've asked in this series is, what are we willing to do for the cause of Christ? What am I willing to do for the cause of Christ? Well, what you're going to find out in this leg that we're in this fall, there's going to be a follow-up question. And the follow-up question is, would you be willing to become a legend? Am I willing to become a legend? I'm just telling you right now, spoiler alert, you're going to be challenged with this question during the fall. And a legend is someone who has their boots on the ground and isn't afraid to get their hands dirty and serve for the local church. They've activated their skills and their passions for the sake of their ministry because they understand that what they're part of is bigger than the part they have to play. In other words, they're taking a section of the wall and they're owning it. And then in December, we have another season of Invite when we put on our Christmas special, Narnia. Now, it's the same thing. It's a great hook series to invite people. And if you want to know what it's going to look like, think Scrooge. How many were here for last Christmas with Scrooge? Wasn't that good? And then how many were here in 2018 when we did The Greatest Showman? That's the kind of stuff we're going for. So that's the part that you play, is you partner with your church strategically, invite them to those events that are specifically set up for them. Now, don't worry, I get it. People don't always show up when you want them to. We still are trying to make every service at least palatable for those who don't go to church. And if you're here today, come back tomorrow or come back next week. Anyway, one last thing, and then I'm gonna wrap up. Darlene and I have asked ourselves the same question. What are we willing to do for the cause of Christ? As I told you, I had it in my mind that I would coast for the next 3 to 5 years as lead pastor. Let the younger people do the heavy lifting. I've done this for 30-something years. Then I started getting excited about something. And it's something that is gonna require work, hard work. And there's a lot of questions I have, and there's a lot of questions that are being asked of me. But it's something that excites me. It's because it's adventurous, because it's a faith journey. And faith is an adventure. I'm telling you, if you don't believe faith is an adventure, it's a journey, just go out and do something and trust God that doesn't make any sense or you don't have all the money for. And I have more questions than I have answers, but like Nehemiah, it takes me back to my roots. So I know I said that I wasn't going anywhere, but I wasn't being quite honest with you. I'm gonna go back to my roots, at least just for this season. And this is my section of the wall that God wants me to build. But this will be the last time that I speak on this stage until at least December, because I'm gonna go work in the children's ministry, because that's my roots. That's where I started at ministry 35 years ago. Now I'll still be the senior pastor. Graham will not be. I will still be the senior pastor. But I'm gonna be working in the children's ministry, because this is what I believe God showed me was my section of the wall for this season. Because when we come to this, I can't ask you guys to do stuff that I'm not willing to do. And like I said, I wanted to coast. I'm gonna let these guys do the heavy lifting. I'm just gonna enjoy it. But the work and the challenge started to excite me, and I said, God, I'm all in. And now right now, I just know it's for the next 3 months. Darlene and I are gonna take a 2-week vacation this week, and then we're gonna meet our children's team in Tulsa, and we're gonna go to a church on the move who has the most progressive, forward-thinking children's ministry in the country, and we're gonna go get some vision there. And then we're gonna come back, and I know it's for 3 months. I don't know what it looks like after that, but I've told God, I'm all in, whatever you want. If you want me to retire as a children's pastor, I will. I don't know. But I'm super excited to get in there with the team in there. I love this team. They're incredibly talented. And I just want them to know that the leadership of this church is behind them, not just with words, but with deeds. And I want to be in there and watch God build the excitement in them for the future when they see what the future is possible and that they play a major role. Because I really believe that 20 years after I'm gone, we're going to look back at this season in our church and go, oh my, did you see what God did there? Did you see what happened? Because listen, I really believe right now our church is poised like never before for the future. And I'm not just saying that because we've done lots of cool stuff. We've bought buildings and did church at Crab Island and AJ's. But I really believe that as we approach this transition season in our life as a church, that what God does in this 3 to 5 years is gonna be what builds this church for the next 20 years. And right now, there are a bunch of people in this church that are like me, the stage of my life, and they're blessed, and God has blessed us, and we can be a blessing. I mean, we have the potential to raise over $1 million by just raising up 400,000 and put this next generation of leaders off to a great start. We have an incredible teacher like Graham that can carry us while I'm in there. This just makes sense. Why would we not do this? So I'll still be here. I'll just be in the kids ministry. I mean, why not? I was a security guard last year. Maybe I should be like undercover boss. I'm working all the different stuff. I'll be like in the nursery. Here's your kid, okay? So we're gonna pray in just a second. I wanna conclude by asking some of the questions that we asked in this series. And I want you to think about them and come back tonight. When we come back, we're gonna celebrate what God's doing. We're gonna bring our offerings, those who are ready to give and those who are saying, I'm on a faith adventure. I don't have it yet, but I'm committing to this. We're gonna bring our commitments. And here's the questions. Darlene asked us this question the first week. What if we just did what was in front of us? What's the wall in front of you? Keep playing, Graham, that's good. What's the wall in front of you? Second week, what are we willing to do for the cause of Christ? You say, Eric, this is for the local church, this is for Shoreline. No, it's the cause of Christ. It's to make Jesus front and center relevance of people's everyday life. And if what we're part of is bigger than the part of we play, then I want you to ask this question, am I all in? Am I all in? And then lastly, I think this needs to become our anthem for the next 3 months, 4 months. I'm doing a great work. I can't come down. I'm doing a great work. I can't come down. I'm doing a great work. God, we believe that you've called us to do a great work. And it's not something that's just gonna end in my lifetime. We believe that just like you said, Jesus, you're gonna build your church and the gates of hell, death would not even be able to stop it, that you're doing something incredible at Shoreline, and we recognize the time and the season in which we live. And Lord, we know that we get to partner with the greatest one that ever was and is to come. And you partner with your people. You don't tell them what to do. You don't force things on us. You give us a choice. God, today we want to see this last and go farther than we ever could take it and last longer than we will be here. So that we just want to say, God, I'm all in. I'm all in. We're doing a great work and we cannot come down. Father, we love you so much. Thanks for your vision. In Jesus' name, amen.